Hello and welcome to the Blackout Podcast, where I get to talk to amazing people who do amazing things. And today, have someone I hope to do a lot of stuff with. Awesome human being, paramedic, father, just all around cool guy. Nizam Farah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to the podcast today.
Thank you, Israel. I appreciate it, man.
So, first off, okay, one of my best actors, and people hate the guy, I don't know why, but it's Michael Bay. And then he made this film, Ambulance. It's like...
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes.
So whenever I'm like, obviously that's not what you do as a paramedic, but like whenever I have, like, that's the picture of a paramedic in mind.
I'd love to.
So, how did you get into this whole paramedic thing?
My initial plan was med school. So I was at Dow. I was taking a undergrad in sciences, and then I twisted gears to do research. So research that I was doing was in pharmacology. I was getting ready to do my master's, and again, my main goal was med school for as long as I've remembered. But then I just had some personal things that happened, and really I lost the taste for med school, but I didn't lose the taste for medicine. So I started working at Good Life, which I...
As a trainer?
No. So as a salesperson.
Oh, right.
Hated it. Hated it. It was the worst job ever. And it really made me think, like, I got to do something with my life. This is not what I want to do. And I had a friend of mine that worked there, and she's like, yeah, I applied for paramedic school. So I said, okay, fuck it. Let's apply and see what happens. 7 years later, I'm loving it. Here we are. Yeah. So it was a fluke. It was a fluke.
What's the training like?
In Nova Scotia, we go to Medivie Health Ed, and that's in Burnside. It's a crash course of 10 months. But in that 10 months, every week you have a test, every month you have an exam. It's very condensed information. So your schooling is 6 months, and then your clinical is 4 months.
Oh, wow.
And after that, you have to write an exam to get certified to work in Nova Scotia. And then after you pass that exam, then you can apply for EHS, which is the only company that at the time when I was applying was hiring paramedics of my level of care. So in Nova Scotia, you have primary care paramedics, advanced care paramedics, and critical care paramedics.
What was it different? It's like...
So scopes of practice, right? So as a primary care paramedic, you are pretty much basic life support. So you have the skills to maintain basic life support. But here in Nova Scotia, our scope is actually the best in the country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we have a lot in our toolbox that we can use on emergency calls, whether it is cardiac arrest, whether it is a trauma or heart attack. There's a lot of things that as primary care paramedics we can do. A lot of provinces can't do. Advanced care, they have a little bit more in their toolbox. And then critical care are the paramedics that either work in the hospital or they work on life flight. So the helicopter.
Oh, yeah. Wait, but like the people that transport the patients between hospitals, is that any level can do that?
Between hospitals. So right now, EHS is actually, surprise, surprise, struggling with staffing. So what they're doing is they're called patient transport units. So those PTUs have a paramedic and they have a ambulance driver. Transport operator is the proper terminology for them. And those are the people that move individuals from one facility to the next, or from a nursing home to an appointment, whatever the case may be. So very, very low acuity. But they're also rolling only 2 transport operators now to do low acuity calls, like the low acuity transfers. So you really have to have advanced
problem before.
Advanced CPR is the only thing you need to have to operate on that level with EHS. Okay. So yeah, it's a pretty sweet gig. You don't move people. You move people that are not sick. Really, really go into appointments and stuff. And then when people are sick, they have to involve a paramedic legally, right? Just in case something happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I guess so. To me though, doing that work. One day it might be just someone that fell on the ice, and then someday it might be friggin' accidents.
Yep.
I guess the range varies, right?
Yes, it does.
what are some things that like they do either part of your training or just you yourself do to like, make sure you are okay based on the things you get to see doing the work you do?
So I will say firsthand, on a personal level, there's no proper mental health system here in Nova Scotia to really help you with any issues that you're having, whether you are a paramedic or you're not a paramedic. Our mental health system fucking sucks here in Nova Scotia. I deal with them all the time, right? I deal with them on the ambulances. I deal with them at the hospital. Mental health is a huge issue here. And for what we do as paramedics in Nova Scotia or even healthcare workers, the mental health help that they have is very inferior. I think it needs a lot of work. A lot of people just give up and they say, okay, I can cope on my own. I've seen a lot of my friends, unfortunately, take their life, and it sucks when you see that because for me as a new paramedic, 6-7 years is nothing. These people I'm talking about have been in the industry for 20, 30 years, right? They've seen a lot in their 30 years that I have seen in my and I've seen a lot of shit. Can you imagine 30 years of it? And they take their life because they didn't have the proper help. Obviously, you can take it within your own hands to go and find proper help. But again, just the way our system is in Nova Scotia is just, it's not right. And I wish they could do something about it, right? Even for me as a healthcare worker and even for you as an individual, right? When you have mental health issues, just it's not there here in Nova Scotia. It's not a main focus, and they really need to focus on helping people with their mental health, especially after the pandemic, right?
That's where I was going to go to.
Yeah.
So like I haven't actually talked to someone. I mean, just like from the outside or on a tangent, I'll know someone that knows a doctor or someone that was working the hospitals during that. Like in the thick of things, like March 2020. How was work like being a paramedic, like when that first real heavy lockdown was?
Think about it this way. This is the first pandemic of modern history, right? The last pandemic that was as severe as this was the Spanish flu back in the early 1900s. Obviously you had H1N1, but H1N1 was in between an epidemic and a pandemic. This was a full-blown pandemic during modern history where we rely so much on technology, transportation, and everything. The world shut down. And that made it really hard for people. It really made it hard for even our job, right? As healthcare professionals, just dealing with, and I'm telling you, a lot of people were like, "Oh, COVID is a fluke. COVID is nothing." I've seen some people that got sick from COVID. And I'm telling you, they did not leave the ICU because they had to go in a body bag, right? And that's tough from young to old. I've seen people that were very sick with COVID. So with that being said, the pandemic really tossed a fuck you wrench in healthcare. And it went from a dumpster fire before the pandemic. I'm saying to a wildfire. Like right now, we're in a forest fire, and when it comes to healthcare.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's very sad that it had to come to this point where this wasn't planned. And I'm not saying people plan for this stuff, right? This is something that really took the world by surprise. Because everybody at the beginning, you remember? Oh yeah, this will pass. Oh, it's nothing.
It
we'll
won't come here.
Yeah. It's not going to come here. And then the first case, we should be fine. We should be fine. And then just like that.
It was so quick.
Just turn of a dime.
Yeah.
So
being in healthcare and seeing what you saw, how did it feel for you when there were like this bunch of people saying, "Oh man, don't do mask and all these things"? And
it pissed me off. It really did piss me off. And a lot of my family members were that way.
Oh
and a
my
lot of
God.
my family members were like, "Oh, don't take the vaccine. This is just the way." I come from a science background. So for me, a vaccine makes sense on a clinical and medical level, right? When you get a vaccine, this is pieces of the virus that is introduced into your body to allow your immune system to get ready. So in case in case it sees those pieces on an actual virus. Does it work? Sometimes it doesn't, because these are all predictions, right? Flu season is the perfect example. A lot of people are always saying, oh, don't get the flu shot, it doesn't work anyway. It's a prediction, right? They can't really get it all the time. COVID vaccine was a little bit different. COVID vaccine was using new technology where they introduced a strain of information into your body to use that information to get ready for the full-blown virus. So when you're reading, listening or reading to the mRNA vaccine, so mRNA is messenger RNA, which is made from DNA. So it goes DNA to mRNA, RNA to the protein. So the mRNA is actually the footprint of information that the body uses to produce the full-blown, okay, we need to look for this whole thing instead of saying, oh, we're going to look for pieces, right? So on a clinical and medical level, yeah, the vaccine made sense. Did it work? I'm still waiting to see that data. Because even, the third wave? Like, how many people were getting fucked by the third wave, right? And everybody was vaccinated at that point. I haven't seen the data vaccinated versus unvaccinated, ICU visits versus non-ICU visits, but I'd love to see it. So again, for me, it was different because I understand it from both levels, right? So, yeah, in a long way, it pissed me off when people were saying don't mask, don't vaccinate. Yeah, that was definitely a piss off for me, but you can't control people, right? People want to do what they want to do. And if you want to force people to do something, they're going to retaliate, which exactly what we saw here in Canada, right?
Yeah, with the people that went to Ottawa. Oh my God, I totally forgot about that.
Oh,
Anyway,
man, let's not start on that, man. Let's not start on
I
that.
totally forgot about that. So you've done this thing a couple of years now. I mean, it's difficult. It's trying. It is, dumps of fire, wildfire. What keeps you doing it?
My love for helping people. My love for helping people and for my love for medicine. As a paramedic in the hospital compared to being a correctional paramedic at the Burnside jail, my scope of practice per se, so scope of practice means the things that I'm allowed to do under my license, is vast. I can do a lot of things, right? And that keeps me interested. The things that I learn every year for new stuff that we are ready to do is interesting. I'm a nerd when it comes to that stuff, right? So that's what keeps me going. I love helping people and I love the medicine.
Where did the love for helping people come from?
I've always had a soft spot in my heart for helping people no matter what the situation was, even from a young age. I've always had it's just something that I never understood, but I naturally was good at it. And just helping people, whether it is with, homework, whether it is for helping them do something, I've always put myself on the line to offer my help and offer my services. I've always been that type of person. So I find being in healthcare is just like that, right? You're putting yourself on the line. You're willing to, being a paramedic, especially nowadays, you're putting your life on the line to go and help people, right? And that doesn't faze me. I just love it because it's something like we need people like that. We need people to really put their heart into helping others, especially nowadays, because I feel like that care is shrinking to nothing, right?
Everyone's like thinking of
Themselves.
myself. Of my
Everybody's
little
thinking of
bubble.
themselves, but you know what? I don't blame them though, right? I don't blame them. Like we are in a world right now of so much uncertainty, so many questions. After the pandemic, like look at the stuff that has come out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Black Lives Matter movement. Right now, the Palestine and Israel. The latest thing that I was listening to on social media was Arabs in North Africa, right? So traditionally, Africa was always, black people. Arabs came and invaded Northern Africa. So now if you look at the Arab world map, it goes pretty much from a little bit further from Libya all the way up to Syria and then all the way down to Saudi Arabia. That's the map of the Middle East, right? Arabs never were in Africa, right? They invaded northern Africa and they settled in those sections. Same thing as what's going on in other parts of the world, right? We are natural predators. We are natural invaders. That's in our DNA. Because it doesn't matter where you are, you always see it happen, right? So yeah, there's a lot of information coming out of nowhere. Don't even get me started with Kanye.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Right? But again, like these are things like look at the stuff that is coming out of nowhere after this pandemic. So much stuff. So much stuff. Right? We're in a crazy world. Very crazy world. But you know, knowing humanity and being a paramedic, you really don't have much of faith in humanity. but you know what? I'm telling you, I'm hoping we get out of this and we all come together, right? We all come together and we just come to a solution to say, okay, this is enough. We need to stick together so we can make sure that we can make it out of this world.
Yeah, no,
Right?
I mean, it's true you said that. Like, my one thing is, you know, my grandma was like, we're all here to help each other.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
if it's actually easier to help people than to, like, fight them. Because
Right.
but anyway, I started this by talking about Michael Bay's Ambulance. And I got to ask, like, is part of your training how to drive the truck?
Yes.
and
Very,
like, what?
very brief. It's a
What
I
do you
think-
mean very brief?
I think my training for the ambulances to drive an ambulance was 2 days.
What? I mean, I didn't. I was like, I'm thinking you're gonna teach you how to like speed and drive.
You're
and-
not allowed to speed in an ambulance.
What do you mean?
So ambulances. So this part will cut off. Well, not cut off, but I'm going to have to be very cautious of what I say in this section because I don't know what EHS wants me to say and what not.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? So I'll say what I can, but I'm going to be very cautious of what I say. Cool. Okay. So generally speaking, when you have a vast fleet of vehicles, companies like to have a chip or a system in them to track everything you do. That makes sense on an insurance liability company trying to save money because they don't want to go through fleet of vehicles, right? So EHS is one of those companies where they have a system that's called the ACE Tech that pretty much monitors everything you do. Again, that makes sense. It tracks your speed live. So if you're in an area where, let's say, you're going 70 in a 50 zone, it's going to ding you. It will send an email to your superior to say, hey, just to let you know, this unit is going this speed, and you have a fob that you fob in. So it automatically lets them know this individual is driving this vehicle. But again, this is a system that exists in any vast fleet of vehicles, right? From truck drivers to cargo drivers, everything, right? So yeah, we're not allowed to speed. And even if we're going lights and sirens, we're allowed to only go 10 kilometers an hour over the speed limit.
But
Even in an emergency. Doesn't matter.
that's my
It doesn't
question.
matter. It doesn't
Is
matter.
that-
But that's because of insurance and liability purposes, right? They don't want you getting in an accident because you're driving like a jackass. Right?
I don't know. I just thought like you have the thing. You just
Oh, listen. You look at your tablet. The tablet is pretty much the computer that gives us all of our information on a call, right? It gives you the address. It gives you the chief complaint. It gives you live
does
information.
it have GPS and stuff?
Yep,
in
it does have GPS, yeah. So it gives you live information of what the 911 dispatcher is getting from the caller onto your tablet so you can see as you're driving, right? So you have your passenger, which is the person that usually attends, and then you have your driver. So they don't focus on that. They're listening to you. When you're reading it and you're like, we have a 6-year-old cardiac arrest, do you want to put your foot pedal to the metal, right? Like you want to go. But again, I understand on a liability and insurance purposes, the company cannot afford you to go and drive like that. So they have to, but again, it's a toss up, right? Some paramedics though, they're like, fuck this. I'm gonna.
Right, because you're literally saving a life.
You're gonna, and time matters at that point,
Yeah.
right? What if they're in a place, and this does happen. What if they're in a place that people have not been trained to use, like to know how to do CPR, or they don't have an AED, and you have an individual that is dead, and nobody knows what to do. At that point, time matters because the muscle's going to start degenerating, and the more time they're down, the less likelihood they're going to make it out of it.
As a primary, do you have to do like physical training? Like, I mean, because you have to carry a person, push the stretcher and stuff.
So your initial training into EHS or your initial test into EHS, there is a physical, and it's quite a hectic physical. Like I remember when I went into it, they had to check my blood pressure and heart rate before, and then I had to do the obstacle of lifting weights, walking around, dropping the weights, putting a person on what we have a stair chair. So if somebody is unable to walk, we have this device is called a stair chair. So they sit on it, and then you and your partner can lift it up and down the stairs. New ones have tracks. When I started, they didn't have tracks. They did not have tracks. And then if you had somebody that was 400 pounds, yeah, it sucked. It sucked. So yeah, that's the one that we had. So they had to put somebody that was 200 plus pounds on this. You go up the flight of stairs, you come down the flight of stairs, and it also it's tracking your communication with your partner going up and down the stairs, right? So they're seeing your physical and they're seeing your coordination and the way that you talk to your partner as you're going up and down the stairs. And then you're doing a round of CPR, and then you're grabbing heavier weights, doing the obstacle and all that kind of stuff. So you had to do it under 9 minutes.
Oh. Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. Oh, but you know what? Like I think I did it in less than 6.
Oh.
I was booting it. But when I sat down and they checked my blood pressure, they're like, "We're gonna check that again. just go sit down and check it, because if your blood pressure was too high, they failed you."
Oh.
At the time when I did the test, because at that point you're a risk. If your blood pressure's too high and your blood pressure's not coming down, you're at risk.
Oh yeah, because you can now, right? It's so, like the whole put your own oxygen mask first.
Exactly. So yeah,
wow.
Back then there was that was the good physical test, but after that
it's like whatever.
You're meat in the seat.
We need people. Meat
in the seat, right? Meat in the seat.
Okay, I'll just segue into beer. So how do you go from like, blood and guts to beer now?
Well, if you're a healthcare worker, you probably understand. Be like, after a long ass day, I'm gonna sit down and drink a beer, right? I remember when I first started getting into craft beer. I have a buddy of mine, and he was the one who introduced me to it. A good friend of mine. We've been friends for 20 plus years. He introduced me into craft beer, and he was like, "Hey man, try this." And I try it. Some of them I didn't like. Some of them I did like. So I gave it up. I was like, no, I'm not going to drink beer. At the time, I was drinking Molson. I was drinking Bud Light, the shitty beer now, to me. And then, I don't know. I just started getting back into it. I was like, you know what? It always killed my guts. Bud Light, Molson, Keith's. I don't know what it is in those products, but it always destroyed my guts. So I was like, I need to try something else, because I enjoyed beer, right? That's when I started getting into craft beer, and this was pre-pandemic, like a year before the pandemic. So I started tasting some beers, and I was like, oh man, like I'd love to do like some social media beer reviews. So I started getting into that, and not every day, I'd say every second day, I'd crack a beer from a local brewery. I'd taste it. I'd do a live review. I'd rank it on a scale of 0 to 10.
Oh.
And then when I started doing that, and I really started enjoying it, I was on social media, and on TikTok particularly, and I saw this mobile tap truck, and the company is called Tap Truck USA. And I looked into it, and I was like, man, that is freaking cool. So I started digging into seeing that kind of stuff here in Canada. There's a few of them in Ontario. There's a few of them in BC, and then scattered across from there. but nothing like that, particularly here in Atlantic Canada. So I was like, ah, man, that would be really cool to get into something like that. And at that point, I was questioning my love for being a paramedic on the ambulances, not medicine itself, but just being a paramedic on the ambulances, right? I was going through a rough time with being overworked, underpaid, never making it home on time. I was like, something needs to change here. So I pitched it to my wife. I was like, hey, what do you think? She's like, you're a fucking idiot. She's like, don't do that. I'm like, why not? I'm like, I love beer. This is something that I can learn. And I've always wanted my business. And I feel like I have, a good head on my shoulders to be an entrepreneur. I was like, I'm going to pursue this. And she was like, well, don't fuck up. Right? She's like, don't fuck up. I was like, okay, I'm going to try. So started to look into it. I didn't want the system that they had in the USA or if they had it across Canada. I wanted to make something very unique, right? So that's where the van came in play. So initially I wanted to stick to the van. I wanted to stick to the very isolated systems. So you have your barrier between the driver and the back, and then you have your your kegerator that separates the back from the beer, right? So if, God forbid, something happens, you're good. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So I looked into it, and then me and Beer Tech. So that's a local company that does beer equipment supplies and kegerators and stuff. Bill, shout out to him. Freaking genius. That guy, he was the one who came up with the system in the back of my van. Great guy. It's amazing. And ever since, I was like, okay, at this point, you can't go back, right? You invested a shitload of money. You got to do what you got to do. And then that's how we started trucking and started doing a lot of outreach to breweries, started doing a lot of outreach to events across the province, doing a lot of outreach to people like yourself, right? And then here we are.
So the name, what's the story behind the name?
So Hoppy Wheels actually came up while my wife and I were having a couple drinks one night. And I was like, all right, babe, what do you think of a good name? And I was like, because my social media name before Hoppy Wheels was Hoppy Ones for my beer reviews. So she was like, you gotta do something that sticks with that, right? I was like, all right, cool. I'm like, okay, like Hoppy Van. She's like, no. And I was like, I don't know, Hoppy Truck. And she's like, no. She was like, what about Hops Wheels? I was like, Hops Wheels. She was like, no, Hoppy Wheels. I'm like, that's it. So my wife actually came up with that, even though she was so adamant to not allow me to do this, because she was the one who came up with the name. She gets a lot of credit for it because it's a great name.
What are some of the events that you've been through that you really enjoyed being at?
So we are fairly new. We just started in mid-July. Right? Very late in the game, especially in the summertime. Nobody knew what we were about, how we functioned. And liquor regulations in Nova Scotia are the strictest around the country. For you to get a liquor license, even at a permanent station, so even for a restaurant, you got to go through a lot of red tape. It's tough. So that was for me, that was the very hard way to learn that liquor licensing was tough after I opened up the business. I knew there was liquor licensing. I did my homework. I was like, okay, these are the type of liquor licensing that you can have, you can apply. I came in contact with the Liquor and Gaming Commission, and they were like, yeah, these are the type of licensing that you can have. By the way, you're not allowed to apply for them. Yeah. So I was like, all right, well, shit. This is going to be tougher than I thought. I started collaborating with Waverly Village Green. So if you've ever been down Waverly, they have a beautiful green space down there that in the summertime they throw free concerts for the community. So people come from Waverly, Fall River, they come from Enfield, Cole Harbour, Dartmouth, Halifax to go down to watch these concerts. And these are pretty great people that are throwing these shows, right? So I collaborated with them. I reached out to them. I was like, hey, I think this would be super cool to have down at the Waverly Village Green. And then when we started looking to the liquor licensing, we ran into an issue that was on their end. But I was like, you know what, let's do non-alcoholic stuff. They're like, is that a thing? I'm like, yeah, that's a thing. Yes. But I'm telling you, like, there's beer, cider, wine, with zero alcohol in it, mocktails. So these are fake cocktails. Taste no different than a regular alcoholic beverage.
I watched this show called Drink Masters on Netflix. I don't know if you know this show, but it's basically bartenders like mixing drinks.
Oh, yeah.
One of the drink that actually won it's like a reality show.
Yeah.
One of the winning drink was a mocktail. So like there was no
How
alcohol
cool
inside.
is that,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
Like there's zero alcohol gin, there's zero alcohol vodka, there's zero alcohol whiskey that you can use that tastes nothing different into these cocktails. And then like how beautiful is it? You can have a few of those and drive home. You're at an event, you're socializing, you're drinking, but you're not getting the buzz, you're getting the flavor. It's just such a cool way to do it, right? So they loved it. So we were down there all summer doing their concerts, and we were serving non-alcoholic drinks. It was a big hit, and it also was great outreach, right? I made a lot of connections. I was chatting with a lot of people. We also went to River John. Do you know where River John is?
No.
By Tadamagush.
Oh, okay.
So they have
There is a brewery there.
Tata Brew.
Oh, okay.
Tata Brew. Great products. Love Tata Brew. They were probably they still are top 5 for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Tata Brew is top 5 for me. They have amazing products there. So we went up to River John, and they had a market. It's called Under the Lights Market. So it's a night market, and we went up there and we did non-alcoholic stuff. And again, it was a big hit.
Wow.
So yeah, we did a lot of that stuff this summer, and hopefully next year it's going to be even more with
the
more
summer.
alcohol.
Wow. You know what, Nizam? It's always amazing and always fun talking to you, and I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much.
Likewise.
But before I let you go, I want to end with this question. Like, you know, so you have the paramedic thing, the being a dad thing, and now this business. How do you make it all work?
I'd love to say a lot of beer. But that's not something I should be saying. A lot. You know what? I will tell you. I'll be honest with you, man. My wife is my rock. She is. She's amazing. She really helps put things to perspective. She holds down the fort at home when I'm busy making things happen for us. Right? I don't do this for me. I want to do it for my family. I want my children to have something that they. You know, my parents had to work very hard for me to have this life, and I don't want them working hard when they grow up, because I want to do all the work for them. So again, between my wife and I, we're a pretty damn good team to make this happen, and a lot of patience.
Wow.
So yeah, you need to have a good significant other to kind of help you push through, right?
Zam, thanks so much for sharing.
Hey, no,
and
I
I can't
appreciate
wait
that.
to keep working with you on things we are planning
Likewise.
to do.
Likewise, yeah, we got a lot of you caught me by surprise. But you know what? It's a good way. I like being caught by surprise. I really
Awesome.
do.
Thanks for going to the podcast today.
Hey, no, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.